Hello and welcome to this video. This is coverage of round, let me think about it, round 3, right, of the London Chess Classics. Okay, so let's have a look at the 5 games, and I can right away tell you that this round was a bit more interesting and exciting than the one before, which is not a big feat. The round 2 was a bit of a boring one, but yeah, we had some interesting games this round. Okay, I'm going to start with the least interesting game, to be honest, and go through that really quickly because we have much to cover in the other games. So Adams Aronian was an anti-marshal with a4, something that could have been predicted before the round, and in fact we did that correctly. We means Grandmaster Lars Bo Hansen and me. I went on the air for ICC yesterday to cover the round together with him, and we had this guess right, yeah, that we had an anti-marshal. Okay, before d4, d6, and now the trade here. This is a line that Aronian has played quite a bit in recent years, and he has an excellent score with it, winning a couple of games. He only lost one game, I think, to Magnus Carlsen once, where he also was better but screwed it up later. So it's a very safe choice for Adams, but not very enterprising, let's say, as Aronian is very comfortable in this position. Had some maneuvers here. Both sides have good squares on c5, and we had some trades coming. Now b3 was an interesting move. Black is getting rid of that b pawn, and in the process also exchanges the c pawn, so that when this is gone, the knight will have a good post here on d4. Yeah, we had some further trades. Rook d2 activating the rook that got directly exchanged, and here we have a situation where that pawn is weak, but the c7 pawn also is weak. Yeah, both black pawns are weak, but white pawns also. Yeah, b2. We have a couple of very logical moves. This is attacked, and black counter-attacks. Yeah, those two weaknesses, they cancel each other out. Yeah, if white now grabs on a6, rook a2 is getting this pawn back. White has no way to cover it. Something like this.
Check.
Is yeah, not doing any good long term. Yeah, black has this coming, and you will win that pawn. So we had those pawns traded, and here a draw was agreed. Yeah, that was a yeah, pretty boring game, but I have to cover it. Yeah, it's a complete round recap. So the other ones were much more exciting. So let's go to see Caruana Nakamura next. The US duel, number 1 against number 2. Very close call. They have almost identical rating, 6 points difference. So we get a Berlin defense. Okay, that's not good in terms of excitement usually, but this game was actually quite interesting, and I can tell you right away we have 2 more Berlins in this round, but they also were interesting. So it's not always going to be boring with this opening. So let's see what happened. Caruana went for d3. He avoids the endgame this time. It's he switches lines. He plays both castles and d3. This time it's d3, and he goes for this kind of structure. It's a little bit like the Ruy Lopez exchange, but the difference is that in the exchange variation of the Ruy with a6, bishop c6, there quite often white opens up the center and then try to play for an endgame. And here it's a little bit different. The center is closed, and white is here trying to get to a long-term maneuvering battle where the knights are not that bad because the position is rather closed, and black's pawn structure with the double pawn is no big issue in terms of the pawn weakness, but in terms of flexibility, black is a little bit less flexible with this pawn play due to the 2 pawns doubled. So we have this. All looking very, very logical. And now Nakamura plays this b5 move. This was surprising to me during the broadcast. I felt that this looks, yeah, I mean, this is somewhat weakening. But also, black has to try to untangle somehow. Knight on d7 is blocking this bishop. So he went for that regrouping. However, we have to say that in this position, white feels, yeah, I think a little bit better. White has this e4 square that he might be able to use, and it's not so clear what black's compensation is for that problem. He went knight to d7. That's a move we actually questioned a little bit during the broadcast, because there also was an alternative to go yeah, knight d5, or not yeah, not yet committing the knight to a particular square. This feels somewhat passive. Knight d2, bishop b4, back, and now knight e4. Yeah, and this already looks a little bit uncomfortable. White has this very nice square, and black has a hard time to challenge the knight. For example, if he goes knight f6, that would be a big mistake. Then bishop g5 is exceptionally annoying for black. Something like this, for example, oops, something like this is completely unplayable. White will castle long and will probably, yeah, win material here already. Queen h6 coming. A bit sloppy here with my arrows. So a very nice position for white. Knight f6 is a, yeah, pretty gross mistake. So what should black do? It's not so clear. The computers recommend this kind of move, but white also has this idea. This is a very annoying looking move for the human player. The computers are not so convinced, but it is quite a problem for black. If he takes with the pawn, bishop h6 is going to win material, as queen g4 is a mate threat and the exchange on f8 is attacked. So knight takes probably, and then bishop g5. And something like that is somewhat yeah, uncomfortable to play. White, for example, has a move like this, after which black shouldn't take, as this is really bad. Yeah, this is weak. Everything's weak on black's part, and white has a very easy game, rook h5 and so on. So check, king here, and now maybe something like this. I don't know, it doesn't look very comfortable for black. It is given as equal by the computers, but I completely understand that human player wouldn't want to go for that. It's not easy to play. Nakamura went for some active defense with b4, but this actually yeah, leaves many weaknesses behind. Like here, white now took, bishop e3, and we see a great knight, and both pawns on the c-file are weak. So Caruana has a pretty substantial advantage, and while we were covering this, we both thought that white should win this somehow. Even though it is not super clear cut how this should be done. Yeah, the queens were traded and white is still that pawn up, but how to win exactly? Not so easy. I can give you a couple of ideas, because the way Caruana is playing it, lots of his advantages is actually dwindling away. Here after knight d5, for example, he went bishop d2. He plays it in a very slow way, which yeah, it looked okay at first, but the way the game turned out, it wasn't so convincing. Here, for example, bishop d2, as I said, is what he played, and this is indeed slow. You can question if he maybe should start with rook c4 or rook c2 or something like that. And wait with this bishop move if he wants to make it in the first place. It's not so clear that black is actually threatening to take this. I mean, if white, let's say, plays a move like that, I think black wouldn't ever take it, yeah, to straighten the pawn structure and allow white to go king e2. So it's not so clear why we need bishop d2 here in this position. Okay, it was played, and now bishop f8. g3. Again, a very slow move. I was expecting b4 here in this position, even though I have to admit that, yeah, while white is better after b4, it's still not super clear. Knight b6 is a counter attack on that pawn, and it is not super convincing. For example, what the engine is giving here is bishop e3, which is a very difficult move to consider. Yeah, seeing that white had just dropped back to d2. Yeah, so it's a bit of a stretch to think of that as a human player. Yeah, this is the line that the engine is giving, with a pretty substantial advantage to white. Yeah, we have to agree, but it's also quite likely that we get some kind of rook endgame, and those have a big drawing margin. It's, I think, however, better than what was played in the game. The way it turned out here, Nakamura got in a5 and a4, and this makes b2 a permanent target. And he got some counterplay. Yeah, rook here, and all of a sudden black feels relatively active. Here, however, is a critical position again. We expected rook d1 in the broadcast as a next move, maybe trying to put the bishop back to have this covered and kind of reorganize the position. We however found this funny move, and it's very interesting. Black can sacrifice the rook here for a double check. However, when we looked at this during the broadcast, we saw a couple of funny lines and thought that white should avoid that. For example, there was a one, okay, this is a really bad play on white's part.
Checkmate.
But it's still funny to see. Yeah, we saw lines like that, and we sort of dismissed rook d1 because of the rook d3 sacrifice. However, if you look at this with an engine, it just gives this, and white is better. I think this is pretty much, yeah, there's no question that white is indeed a lot better here, even though it's not clear if it wins. Yeah, for example, knight d4 seems to be the toughest defense.
Check.
Takes. And yeah, okay, white is better, but are you winning? That is not that easy. Like rook c1, for example, looks tempting, activating the rook. Yeah, and black here, for example, can go c5 and just jettison that pawn, so that he's getting rid of his dark squared bishop. And something like this, it's not entirely clear if white will ultimately win this game. He is better, everything's good, but do you win? Not easy. So it was always difficult for Caruana to play, because all lines are somewhat better for you, but what exactly is the best? Yeah, it continued for a while, and there was just one particular moment where I think Caruana could have improved, and this is here. He went king d2. Both sides didn't have much time left, and instead rook e3 was still promising some chances, trying to activate the rook like that. It's a bit surprising that he didn't go for that, because I think it's a clear improvement of the rook position to try to go to e4. King d2 felt a little bit like a waiting move, something like that. Here bishop c5, rook e4 is the logical way to continue, and if black wants to avoid that loss of the a4 pawn for nothing, he has to go here, after which, however, we get to the c6 pawn. So something like that might happen. And here white is quite a bit better, yeah, and has good chances to win still. So that game is a little bit like a series of yeah, missed opportunities maybe by Caruana. Here the worst is over for black. It's important to understand that this was played here, and now the check here. It's important to understand that rook takes h5. It's not a good idea. This rook is now completely offside. Yeah, something like this, for example, intending rook b2. Black is essentially playing a rook up. Yeah, it takes the engines, by the way, quite a while to recognize how bad this is, because the computer is not thinking in terms of, okay, this is never going to get out. It just calculates stuff. But black is, of course, yeah, black should win this position. It's not shouldn't even be a draw.
Check.
So they repeated moves like that and drew the game. So a somewhat unfortunate end for the game for Caruana, but tough defense also on Nakamura's part. He really got himself into some trouble, but defended very tenaciously, and at the end got rewarded by a draw. Okay, next game will be Grishuk Giri. And we've got again a Berlin. Yeah, but interesting. We get the typical
Check.
Berlin Wall endgame, and now it's set up with h5 is tried out. And what Giri is doing here is something that I haven't seen yet in the Berlin, which might be due to my lack of knowledge, but still that idea felt pretty unique to me. Bishop g5, c5, knight c3, and now bishop b7. This is the idea that I'm talking about. He fianchettoed the bishop and just hacked this knight off. Interesting. The consequence is that this knight now looks, like a very strong piece. It's completely, unassailable by any pawn. So that's nice. But we have one precise problem with black. White is threatening those knight jumps. And it's difficult to allow. I mean, you have to go c6. There's no other way. Knight d5 cannot be allowed. And this, on the other hand, of course, weakens d6 quite a bit. So, very interesting position. Bishop e7, f4, takes, king e7. All played relatively quickly here up to this point by both players. It's tough to say. I have a hard time to evaluate this position. But the way it turned out, knight d6 was played, king e6, and now f4 by Grishuk. It turned out that black was in some trouble. On the other hand, we have to take a look at the clock times. 1 hour 30 for Giri and Grishuk. I'm not quite sure that this is correct, but he was down to a couple of minutes. I think. I wouldn't bet big money on that, but I think it was between like 5 and 7 minutes. The relay here sometimes isn't 100% precise, but Grishuk really was in time trouble, and there's no increment in that tournament, so it's something to keep in mind. Yeah, rook d8 was played, and it's possible that this leads to to that big trouble that I was talking about. Maybe he had to really just take this and go for this type of position. It's hard to tell exactly what this is, how to evaluate this. Like rook d7 is going to be played, and black probably goes rook f8, then gangling for rook d8. It's tough to evaluate, but probably black has to do it. I mean, it's tough to evaluate means I think it's better than the game. That's pretty much clear, but it's hard to tell if it's equal or what exactly to make of it. This is definitely bad for black, because after rook e1 now, for black it's too late now to take. This is the important thing.
Check.
Now the pawn captures, and something like this is unplayable for black. White's pawn here is far too strong. Yeah, if black takes here, we've got h4 and later rook e7 coming. That's just not going to be playable for black. So he went g6, and now he's entirely passive. Black cannot take on d6. This didn't feel very successful. While white can improve pretty easily, even with no time. You can play that quite comfortably. a6 looks pretty awful, but it's difficult to give black any advice. The thing is that white also threatened a5, and here a5, let's say, here a5 can be answered by b5, and this is what he wanted to prepare. On the other hand, this is of course weakened. It's just a choice between various evils that black has to make. This is what he tried. Yeah, and now taking the pawn. Yeah, and here we come to a critical situation. I think knight takes c6 now would have been close to winning for Grischuk. One thing is that this is leading to a lost knight endgame. The pawns here are too weak. And this is also a completely dominating position where black has a hard time to improve his pieces in any meaningful way. Yeah, let's say knight f5, for example. Knight goes here. And, you have this regrouping and complete control. It's just an overwhelming position for white. Yeah, knight c6 was stronger. Rook c6 is also not terribly bad or so. Yeah, I mean white keeps some pull, but it gives black some more hope, definitely. And one thing we see is this, a very nice move here by Giri to trying to defend this position. I think now after the next move, Grischuk now takes with the pawn. It's probably a draw. The toughest it seems to be was rook c7 check, even though it's not entirely clear if this is going to be enough to win the game. Black has this counterplay, and the important thing is he will get this pawn very likely. King g2 is just too passive, and if you go up, this h pawn will prove to be quite a dangerous asset. It's not quite clear. I played around a little bit with this, and in most cases black managed to draw. Not 100% sure, but it seems that black should be okay. Yeah, this happened.
Check.
And here black's counterplay is definitely enough. One thing is that here probably Grischuk, I mean, we have to take into account that he was down to a couple of seconds. He maybe didn't see knight e8 beforehand when he was angling towards this. And knight e8 is a very nice defensive move. Now trading off that fantastic knight, yeah, this is a blunder. So white has to accept this, and here black has enough counterplay. I mean, he's a pawn up at the moment, but the important thing is that he's got yeah, lots of activity. White now went f5, and after that they made the draw here with the checks. If white takes on g6, black can check here and enter, and this also is something that black should never lose. Equal material, and we get things here. So a draw at the end. Giri is notoriously difficult to beat. Yeah, he hasn't lost a single game yet on the Grand Chess Tour, and this is a pretty impressive feat. Yeah, over more than 20 games now against this opposition. A bit lucky here. Grischuk really had outplayed him quite nicely, but yeah, if you defend in a tenacious way, you sometimes get rewarded by those kind of results. Okay, let's have a look at the duel of the world champions. Now Anand Carlsen, world champion 15, Vishy Anand against number 16, Magnus Carlsen. So it's again, we know, you know, the Berlin. But I can promise you that we had some interesting points there. So Vishy is going for the endgame. And this is now played. Yeah, there are a couple of deviations, of course, along the way, and I don't want to make a survey of this opening, but the interesting point comes here. This is already a somewhat rare position. Yeah, there are many alternatives before, but this is already a somewhat rare. The thing is that now bishop c5 was played by Magnus, and this idea is was completely unknown to to both Lars Bohansen and yours truly. Never saw that idea. In the Berlin, just put the bishop out to c5. Normally black is going for a setup where the bishop comes to e7, or sometimes even the knight will regroup and only then you go to e7. But going to c5 was something that we didn't have on our radars at all. Yeah, Anand now plays in a very principled fashion. Yeah, gaining space on the kingside. This is also one of the reasons for this somewhat mysterious h3 move earlier. This move here, you prepare g4, knight e7 back. That is now possible, of course. Yeah, as the it's possible all the time, but here it's played in a situation where the bishop is not buried on f8, but out in the open on c5. Knight here, attacking that bishop, and bishop d5. If black wants to, black only wants to give up the bishop if its pawn structure gets straightened out. Of course, white is not taking on d5, but goes with this. The knight comes to e4, gaining a tempo. Bishop back to b6, that was the idea. And now king g2. The idea of king g2 is that after a possible h5, you want that king to protect crucial squares, and also you want to be ready to bring the f-pawn into the game. Yeah, want to get out of this diagonal so that there is no pin on the f-pawn. Rook d8, bishop f4. Yeah, first developing the bishop here and later push with f4. Very logical, let's say, course of the game. Carlsen now traded, and here he surprised us by going king to e7. We absolutely had reckoned with this move because we thought that this forces the capture on h4. White cannot move the king. This is can lead to some embarrassing situations. Here, for example, this is a funny line. Knight e2, takes, and now knight f5. Very embarrassing, threatening knight e3 check and winning the rook. And rook h1 with, yeah, that's almost a mate, but to win the rook on d1. Yeah, here white is just lost. Amazing. Yeah, something like this is going to happen. And this is a pretty funny example why bishops are stronger than knights in many cases. Amazing position. Yeah, so white absolutely has to take this, and then we expected this line. And yeah, now maybe rook h1, not quite clear if we want to do this, but something like that. That was on our radar, and we thought that black is okay. And I think we were right, black is okay. The line that Carlsen played was a little bit different. He played king e7 here, but now rook h1, white was quicker, or let's say quick on the h file, so that knight h4 check is not on. And now black has to take f5 into account, and the knight doesn't have such a great square. He played this. Yeah, the idea is that after f5, this is going to win, so white has to react to that. Oops. And took on d5. Maybe Carlsen underestimated that move. It's not quite clear what he exactly was thinking. In this situation, however, we felt that black has some problems to solve, especially in regards to a possible knight e2. Let's say if black goes for something like that, then knight e2 is a pretty annoying move. You cannot take on b2, as rook b1 is pretty awkward. Yeah, so let's say takes. Check. And here, after rook d7, rook b3 is pretty bad. Yeah, you have no good square for that bishop. Something like this is downright awful. Yeah, where do you want to go with the knight? Back to f8.
Check.
Yeah. Black's position is a complete mess here. It turns out that knight e2 is very annoying, so he captured on c3. Pawn takes, and king d7, yeah, getting a square for this. It's a funny line here is if black tries to trade down the rooks, then this is flat out winning. It's a funny position with the knight here. Yeah, f6, e6, and this is completely off. So that was no good idea. He went king d7, giving some space here for the knight. So f5 was played, knight e7, rook e1, here king f3. And around here we thought that maybe white is a little bit better, but it didn't really materialize. Yeah? Carlsen attacked this pawn 2 times, and white had to protect. And now he played a very nice move, g5, a move that I couldn't really, at first I was surprised about it, because it's a little bit uncommon that you would put a pawn on a dark square, and especially in a case where it is almost fixed on g5, the pawn will never move from there. And it's uncommon to put a pawn there when the other side has a dark squared bishop, but that kind of regrouping, like a bishop coming over to d2 and attack that pawn, is simply not possible in this position, as e5 is always under attack. In general, white has that problem now. Yeah? He needs to have those 2 pieces cover e5, and this probably means that we're talking about an equal position. White cannot move his pieces, and black also has a hard time to improve. However, there's something interesting happening a little bit later, and this is coming here. They both made some somewhat shuffling type moves. Yeah, and here Anna definitely should continue with the shuffle, king f3. And it's very likely actually that they would have drawn then, because there is no way forward for black trying to improve, and white also, he has to shuffle with this cover on e5 being mandatory all of the time. What he did is he played this move, and it's not quite clear why exactly. Why to do this instead of king f3, because there is no big active idea, let's say, connected with the move. So it feels like a shuffling move, but it's actually not a very good shuffling move, as now knight a5 is possible, and the knight will come to c4. In this situation, knight a5 is no good due to this, and black having released the pressure on e5, he has allowed white to enter. This is something that black probably shouldn't do. After rook e3, however, knight a5 is something that black is happily playing, as the knight is just more active now, and does the same job on c4 as it was doing from c6, attacking that pawn. So king f3, king d7, and now a5. Yeah, what's the idea of a5? That pawn on a4 is fixed, and with c6 and b5, black gets to make progress on the queen side. And this is very serious business. If we get an a-pawn, that's going to be a dangerous passer. Anand played rook to b1 here, and certainly being aware that he made some bad decisions earlier. Now is a critical position. Carlsen has to make one more move. He's got about 16 to 17 minutes left on the clock, and in this particular position he had to take his chance there. Knight takes e5 now was very strong. It's not clear if it wins, but it seems that black has good winning chances with this move. A takes b5, I guess, and knight takes, just taking pawns there. Important point is that if white tries to promote the b pawn, that this is not helping a lot. Yeah, something like knight e3 check, something like this, for example. Yeah, black can easily give up the exchange, as he, as he's of course having like a million of pawns. Yeah, three pawns, and this is also falling. So that's absolutely no good for white. It's difficult, however, to give white some advice. Probably tougher is king f3, after which black can go knight h6 and attack this pawn. It's not clear if this is holding for white. For example, if white pushes this pawn in knight f5, yeah, it's just better for black. But what can you do? He's material up, and this is not a clear counterplay. Yeah? Like this, we take, and here the king is stopping the pawn. This in particular should just win for black. Knight takes e5 was a huge opportunity. However, Carlsen, after a long think, played rook h8, and this move was very irritating for my commentating grandmaster colleague and me, we have no idea what this move is doing. It was really completely mysterious to us. If you don't take e5, why exactly go to h8? Why not, let's say, go to a8, where you at least kind of support the a pawn? It's really not clear what this is doing. Yeah, Anand now played bishop f2. He took this opportunity to activate the bishop, maybe getting it here or to c5. And it seems that now the worst is over for white. Carlsen took the pawn now. And it's clear that in comparison this must be a lot worse than with the rook on e8. Yeah? A takes b5, knight g4.
Check.
Check. And here we already see that white has activated quite a lot. And this move will also help the rook to get active. The bishop is also now in a somewhat dominating position against this knight. Rook e8.
Check.
Yeah. And now white was active enough. Yeah, there were various possibilities, but it is all going to end in a draw.
Check.
As the pawn count is getting down. Those pawns can also be completely traded off. I think they here already, yeah, here they agreed to a draw. So that was a somewhat lucky draw for Vishy Anand, that possibility of knight takes e5. Here, knight takes e5 was a big chance for Carlsen, but it seems that he's not quite yet out of his bad form that he had in the recent month. I think it's pretty much unthinkable that Carlsen in top shape would let this opportunity slip. Okay, we have one game left, and this is MVL with white against Topalov. Topalov, the only player in this event who has lost the game in the first round against Giri, when he fell for some tactical wizardry by the Dutch player. When he was short on time, Giri found a nice idea, and Topalov didn't spot the point and lost. So he badly needs some results, because I mean, in the Grand Chess Tour, the overall standings, Topalov is leading by 1 or 2 points, just a very, very narrow lead. So he definitely needs a good result in this event to get something going in the overall standings. So we get a Najdorf. That was kind of expected. They are both Najdorf specialists and very principled players. And the French number 1 here goes for h3. It's a good interesting sideline that in recent years has gotten more and more popular. It also shows a little bit that the mainline Najdorfs are not that successful for white. H3 has one particular idea, and this is g4 or bishop e3. In some cases, bishop e3 is now prepared as g4 is covered, but the main idea is to push g4. Yeah, in many cases, this is the key idea. Okay, e5 was played, dropped back, and now if black plays a routine move like bishop e7, then white will go g4, then bishop g2, and try to gain even more space on the king side while maintaining some control over d5. This is why this move has become fashionable. Black is just using this tempo to prevent g4. Very modern approach to this position. g3, knight bd7, bishop g2, b5, and knight d5. Yeah, we have a structure pretty typical of many Sicilian lines, like the Sveshnikov, the Najdorf, in some cases the Kalashnikov. Black has that weakness on d5, that square weakness, but as we will see, he's got a good piece position. Like, let's go forward a little bit with knight and bishop, and they both look at the square. So there is no danger that white is going to occupy d5 with a piece and establish a piece there long term. If white is putting a piece there and the pawn will appear on d5, this is usually not that dangerous. We see that scenario in the game. White is playing a4 and puts the knight to d5. Yeah, here black has this choice. He can take with both pieces, knight d5 and bishop d5. We were more expecting bishop d5, and this kind of thing. Maybe then knight d7 to c5. But Topalov's choice is perfectly fine. He took with the knight and went a5, yeah, covering this b4 square. Pawn, I'm sorry. Yeah, now queen e2 was played, attacking the h5 pawn. This is of course now a slight weakness. That pawn move early on is somewhat, but it's a committal move. Yeah, it's nothing that can be fixed later, let's say. And it turns out that Topalov has a tactical solution for this problem. He does not have to cover that pawn. If white now takes on h5, it's getting into huge trouble. This is something that you don't want to see. The rook getting very active here. So he took on g5 first and now played h4. That's a much better choice. Queen takes h5 really was just a mistake. Here or would have been just a mistake. Here we expected queen e7 to happen. The idea is that we wanted to cover that bishop so that after queen b5, black has this easy move rook c5. This is hanging, but again, we felt that this is not so dangerous. Black can just continue with his play, yeah, like here, and putting pressure on that pawn. And it doesn't seem to be very dangerous for black. He said pawn down, but his play is pretty substantial. Note that this is not a good idea. Okay, now it appears, the arrows. h7 is checkmate and the rook is hanging, so not a good idea. Topalov played queen f6, however. I mean, this is also good. Queen e7, let's say our move wasn't bad, but this is also quite okay. The idea is that now queen takes h5 is downright bad due to this, with this pawn attacked and this pawn attacked. And bishop e4 now, there's just g6. Yeah, because there is no sacrifice now on g6. The queen is protecting this. And yeah, white is just in terrible shape here. So what did he do? He played queen b5. This is the far more critical move. Queen e7 now back and takes. So what is the counterplay? Black gets his pawn and gets pretty active rook on c2. An important point is that now if white takes on b4, he played this one, but if white takes on b4, then black also has good play. The only thing that he should do is avoid this move. This is what we thought during the broadcast, but this is a mistake. Rook c1, rook f2, there is queen b6 with a nice double attack, and black is losing material. But black has no problems whatsoever. He should just play this move. Queen over here, covering c1, so rook c1 is not happening, and black has enough active play now. He still has this idea, or sometimes just bring the rook over. He will definitely get a pawn back with a very decent position. This was played, and here Topalov had calculated this very precisely. Rook takes b2 was possible now. The thing is that the move rook c7, which looks great in the first place, or in the first look, is actually rather bad because of queen here. And this is a pretty awful, pretty awful pin of the rook. White cannot move the queen now, and the rook is also, yeah, immobile. It's just a very bad idea for white. So rook c7 is bad, and he played rook b1 instead. Yeah, making sure that we get the pawn. Okay, black went rook a2, queen b4, and bishop a6. And now queen b3. Critical moment now. It seems that here Topalov had an active possibility. The computer wants to play rook d2, just keeping the rook on the board. An important point is that after rook d1, here black can take, which is okay, but he also has an additional interesting possibility. This move. At first it looks pretty crazy because again we have this tactic, but black in fact can capture here and play the bishop back to c8. And that position is surprisingly difficult to play for white. There is this idea, queen d7 and queen h6. And also there's f5, f4. And all of a sudden white's king feels extremely shaky. That line, I think, would have been completely. That would have been Topalov's taste for sure. Yeah, this kind of active play, but it seems that he didn't see this possibility, and he went for bishop f1. This is not necessarily so bad, but the alternative just seems stronger. Queen takes on a2, and now he captured on g2. We felt that bishop d3 is better, keeping this on, also to keep some kind of eye on the a6 square, so the a pawn cannot run up the board so quickly. The idea also would be e4 later. It's maybe better, but I think the real issue is coming here. Here white has the easier game with the a pawn, but if black now goes for immediate counterplay with e4, it still might be enough to draw this. Might be. It's not easy at all, but it seems stronger than what he did. The idea is to, of course, just push all the way to e3 and get at white's somewhat weakened king. We'll see the difference to the game, I think, pretty clearly. If white now plays, let's say, rook to b6 to attack this pawn, then black has queen e5 or f5. Both moves come into consideration. Also, the immediate e3 is interesting as well, coming with queen e4 here. Yeah, in any case, this is a better counterplay than in the game. In the game, he went rook a8, and now a5 was played, e4 and rook b3. And this is the big problem. Now you're not getting to e3. The rook is covering that. And the a pawn already is pretty quick. f5. After this, it's probably over for black. Probably, yes. It's not clear that other moves still save, but f5 seems to be too weakening. Queen e5 is probably a bit tougher, but it is very difficult to give black advice here. The a pawn is very dangerous. Queen d2 now played by MVL. He covers those squares so that there's no counterplay coming. The engine is very fearless and wants to go a6. Probably computer is right, as usual in such a forcing position. Something like this, for example, looks indeed winning. Black doesn't have something serious here. He can just give one check, and here it's basically over. There's rook b8 coming, and yeah, no good way to prevent that. Okay, king h7, this is possible. There are some ideas with counterplay, but note that this is also a pretty big problem. Yeah, this was played. That is not so powerful in comparison. Queen c7, queen b2, intending rook b7 quite clearly. And here queen takes a5 still continued the game a little bit. It looks pretty awkward.
Check.
But at least here white has to trade queens and we get to a rook endgame. I mean, black is probably losing this as well, but yeah, you can continue the game. After this, rook b7, it is unfortunately for Topalov, it's over. Rook a2, queen b5, and here black has absolutely no way to save himself. Queen c1, for example, there's queen e8.
Check.
And this, and something like this is downright awful. Black is a pawn down, all remaining pawns are weak, and his king is bad. And no counterplay, that is still lost. Yeah, he tried this move, which is like pure panic, but had to resign after queen e2, as black is out of any meaningful checks. He can give one more check, but that's it. Yeah, or maybe like two or so. But ultimately, it will be over with the revenge checks, the spy checks. So a second loss for Topalov, who again reacted somewhat badly under time pressure. It seems that he's maybe somewhat rusty. I don't know. He didn't play in the European team championships, as Bulgaria didn't participate. I don't know. It feels like he's not quite on 100% in this event. -2 after 3 rounds is pretty bad, and it means that he's almost out of the out of this competition for the overall winner of the Grand Chess Tour, as you definitely need a good result in this third event. And from the -2 score, it doesn't feel like he's staging a big comeback. Leading after 3 rounds are MVN and Anish Giri, were both with +1. But it's, of course, yeah, all players, I mean, probably not Topalov, but all other players might be able to do something in the event. Yeah, they're all on 50% or +1. So it's a very, very tough competition and very interesting event overall. We had a good round, this round 3, and let's hope that the coming rounds will be just as interesting. Hope you enjoyed the coverage, and I'll be back tomorrow with round 4. Thanks for watching.